Planetary Sojourns and Soul Development. Part 2. This should ever be the basis for the entity's mental reasoning. For beginning with that of the creative energies, God is, and in Him we all live, move, and have our being, whether in the phase of worlds, individuals, or that created for man's sustenance. All are a part, a portion of the whole. In the manifesting of the various phases of life, that the expression of the Creator, and that created reflects its expression of the Creator. In self, then, not my will, nor the will of those whom I love, or whom surround me, body, mind, or physical, but His, the Creator's, and my reflection, my activities, are the expressions of my concept of my Creator, my God. See? In the application of self in this direction, we will find the self will find that happiness, that contentment, that is not surpassed, is not found in any other direction. Many being the experiences of the entity in the present, many in the experiences through the various spheres the entity has passed within this, the earth experience, gains for that understanding, that knowledge, as comes through the concentration and consecration of self to a purpose, to an ideal. To leave those that may do as they choose, but, for me and my house, we will serve the living God. In this has the entity builded, and in the understanding of the allness of conditions, or the oneness of purpose in the creative forces, will the entity gain that as is the last developing rung in this experience. The astrological influence, these are only as urges, when related with the mental, and will bring for and through environmental changes. Dependent upon, however, the manner in which the entity applies the will's influence as respecting same. Will, that element in human experience with which one develops to or from a common center. That builded in each experience must be met by that entity, and only in making self's own will, one with the divine creative energy, and becoming as one with same, may one develop in any experience. The application of will, under the present experience, may make for the greater development in the earth's plane. For it is the response to an influence as to that as is builded in a material or secular sense in an entity's life or physical experience. That is, as an experience or circumstance, as may be termed in an earth's environ, one responds to, or with, an experience, an act in daily life, in accord to that impression or activity as is produced in the mental being, and the result as comes from such activity is the physical, or the body physical, from such. First, an ideal. In every phase of experience does the entity measure the actions, the activities, the influences and the actions, whether from the mere sense of duty, whether in the spiritual sense or the mental sense, or of the social sense, that the ennobling influence must be gauged by an ideal. Each individual must have an ideal, not merely ideas, for ideas may be all wrong. Ideals are worth working for. In the application of the influences as come through the astrological aspects, these may be used as stepping stones or allowed to become influences as to be detrimental. Dependent upon the application of the will as respecting that held as the ideal, or the ideal's relationship to the creative energy, as is one in all. As to whether the influences are used as exaltations of self, self's interest, self's influence, or affluence, depends upon the application of that as lies within each individual. In entering astrologically, we find these would, in this particular individual, mean little. For that builded has been not by main strength and awkwardness, but rather of the definite, purposeful, willful, guiding that as would, does, will, bring definite conditions in the life experience of an entity. Much, even books, might be written as respecting the manner in which desire and will, as manifested, has been the experience of the entity. Yet each sphere and its environmental conditions have their part in the experience of the entity. And truly may it be said, the entity rules rather the destiny of solar systems than of an individual star. in those influences as are seen in the appearances of the entity. These, as we find, may be altered much, as the astrological influences bring in the experience of the entity will, that factor which may be trained, even as the mental forces, and will. That developer in the material force, being the balance between influences, as to those innately built or those of that karmic influence that makes for the freedom of the mental being. Will is that developing factor with which an entity chooses or builds that freedom, or that of being free, knowing the truth as is applicable in the experience. And in the various experiences as has been builded, for that builded must be met, whether in thought or in deed. For thoughts are deeds, and their current run is through the whole of the influence in an entity's experience. Hence, as was given, he that hateth his brother has committed as great a sin as he that slayeth a man, for the deed is as of an accomplishment in the mental being, which is the builder for every entity. Much of the individuality of the entity is expressed in that which the entity studies, while the personality of the entity is rather expressed in that of the spoken word, in associations with individuals, groups, classes, or masses. In that as has been builded as the personality, we find those influences as make for the associations among peoples. For experience be the teacher, and these applied in the influences as come, both through that in the daily activities, as well as in those of introspective experience, may build much in the lives of others. Kindness, consideration, patience, endurance, long-suffering, loving kindness, brotherly love, these build for that which may not be taken from an individual. For they become as individualities, and make for, in the personality as exhibited in the earth's experience, those conditions which will make for the mental balance and content, and the material gains of such a nature as to make for contentment, and the carrying away of dissatisfaction, discourteousness, disrespect, disregard for law, for order, home, kindnesses, and such. For these make for those conditions as bring the disorders in an individual's experience. Patience, long-suffering, kindness, endurance, tolerance, and brotherly love, faith, hope, charity to all. These are as the children of the entity's development, making for those influences as build in the present experience, as develops, which, when grown and manifested in the material actions of the body, bring that pleasing, patient personality as is manifested, especially with those whom the entity would influence. Knowing, then, that the spirit is willing, keep the mind looking, hoping, wishing. Hopeful for the heavenly vision, for in the visions of the entity often comes the greatest experiences of the entity.